Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a proud Gomeroi man, on behalf of my family, I'd like to acknowledge the beautiful country we're on, the country of the Gomeroi people, and acknowledge our elders, both past and present, who have cared and cared for this country. And so, Billy Unbeli, Garna Marius Gaingal, Gomeroi Ngamlanginda, Wanalanginda, Wenangalawa. I'd also like to just quickly acknowledge that around this time, back in 1830s, there was a large corroboree that was held down here at the banks of the Peel River, with 300 Aboriginal men dancing, surrounded by family and community. A magnificent event that we've recorded early in Tamworth's history, and it's astonishing that 15 years later, after that event, Tamworth was recognised as a town having almost 500 residents. Now, to me, that acknowledges that the presence of Aboriginal people in this town has been here since the beginning, and the more that we can recognise the presence of Aboriginal people in these spaces and the continued occupation, the greater we are along that cause. So I'd like to acknowledge the country we're on, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. I'd like to call to stand and ask Councillor Bell to do the meeting prayer, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Almighty God, we celebrate the bountiful riches of our city and region and rejoice in the diversity of many nations who call Tamworth home. We thank you for the men and women of our council who serve our communities. Bestow wisdom, courage and boldness as you direct their leadership and deliberations. Bring hope, fairness and prosperity to all people who live and work in Tamworth Regional Council. In the name of our Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Councillors, I declare the meeting open, and I call for apologies and leaves of absence.
To Councillor Tickle and Councillor Rodder.
Could I have somebody move that we accept Councillor Tickle and Councillor Rodder? Councillor Sutherland seconded. Councillor Mears, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Community consultation, item 2. Councillors, tonight we have 2 speakers. Firstly, we have Mr. Peter Dillon to speak on item 5.1. Peter, I'll ask you to come to the lectern out the front, and you've got 3 minutes to give a presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, councillors, I'm Pete Dillon, Director of a local plumbing business, and I'm also a board member with Regional Unlimited. Thank you again for considering the invitation to partner with Regional Unlimited in this important project, which is the Pioneers Portrait Leadership Development Project, with our Auntie Yvonne Kent being the first of many leaders or pioneers of our community to be honoured. From the additional materials we provided for your consideration, we believe it will be clear that the project perfectly aligns with your Blueprint 100 vision for the community. That is to build a more resilient and inclusive community. It's to celebrate our rich culture and heritage, and it's to expand our proud identity. The invitation for the partnership is captured by an African proverb: if you want to walk fast, walk alone, but if you want to walk far, walk together. It would be surprising to find anyone who would deny that to have a region with every single person thriving and prosperous, and for everyone to be treating each other with compassion and revering our culture, we have very far to walk. What we've put to you is a suggestion of what the partnership could look like in terms of the contribution. And although much of that detail is operational, saying yes means that the council will have to say in how they would like it to be done, what resources they would like to offer, and what considerations you would like to be included. To make this project a real success, it is imperative we receive the full funding we are seeking. As a community, we have far to walk, much work to do, but let's walk together and achieve more than we can alone. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Second speaker tonight is on item 10.2, and I'd like to welcome our Tamworth Regional Youth Deputy Mayor, Jack Lyon.
Well, firstly, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for having me here tonight. Good evening to councillors, staff, and everyone else attending. Firstly, I'd like to just acknowledge that we have Callie Nagel, our youth mayor, here tonight, as well as our youth secretary, Chloe Opie, here tonight. Well, 2 weeks ago, the Youth Council passed a historic motion to develop a Youth Council action plan over the next month to implement it for a 12-month period. The Youth Council Action Plan is a game changer in many ways. It's 100% developed by youth for youth and aims at key areas such as work-ready, well-being, connectivity and community. The recommendation that we passed the other night was to implement at least 8 actions over the next 12 months by the Youth Council to work along each pillar which has been recommended by the 2020 Youth Regional Framework delivered by the New South Wales Government. What this will entail is widely up to what the Youth Council want to do for their own constituents, but on a regional, local level, the Youth Council is a very powerful platform for youth voice in the ways they want to see the community change and become more inclusive for the future. The Youth Council Action Plan involves many steps and is outlined in an official document that was released a fortnight ago. However, the long-term goals we want to see is a youth strategy developed by the end of the year. This youth strategy will be a long-term commitment towards youth and will actually show to youth that on a local government level, the council does care for youth and their futures here in Tamworth. Whether that be from a job or an apprenticeship during school or staying here and going to the new university later down the track, youth currently living here now need a plan for the future. There are in the latest census, there was over 16,000 youth from age 5 to 24 living here in Tamworth. And currently they do not have a short-term goal and they do not have a long-term commitment by council on any level. I've reviewed over 8 strategies over the past 2 weeks from all across New South Wales. And in that, there are many ways Tamworth Council can improve on all aspects in a young person's life. And with this, I'd like to leave you with a closing thought. The current babies being born this year, in 2022, is the graduating class of 2040. The next generation is here, and they don't have a plan. And what we're providing from a youth perspective is an opportunity to make all young people's lives better in the long term. Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Solid.
Great to hear from our Youth Council. Okay, councillors, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. Minutes from the previous meeting. Could I ask Councillor Southwood, seconded Councillor Cates, would you like to make a comment on that? No comment. Anyone wish to speak against them being a true and correct record? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Councillors, we'll move on to item 4, which is disclosure of interest. Any councillors wish to disclose any interest in any of the items that are Councillor Betts?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would like to declare a non-pecuniary insignificant interest in item on page 15. On 15, the reports to be considered in closed council. The Langans Lane, Moore Creek land acquisition for the road realignment. My son has submitted a letter in relation to the site distance, the access, as he is an adjacent property to that acquisition. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I'll be leaving the
Councillor
room.
Betts. Councillor Southwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to declare a non-financial, low significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 12.6 in relation to a lease, just in relation to the fact that I have family working in the real estate industry. Although no one relates to that particular lease, that is the reasoning, just around family working in the industry. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Southwood. Are there any other mentions of conflict of interest? No. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 5, the mayoral minute. Councillors, I've put forward a mayoral minute again with a lot more information than we had before us last time in relation to Regional Unlimited and the Auntie Yvonne Kent commemorative portrait project, which is about the portrait and is about sponsoring leadership, leadership training into the future. And I think that's something that we need to consider fairly. I think we've got a $20,000 cash contribution with $5,000 in kind. So, councillors, I put that recommendation. And Councillor Coates, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to this project, I'd like to acknowledge that initially I had a very poor understanding of what it was about. And as a result of my questions and those that were asked by me by a number of other people, I went and sought clarification, background and further information. As stated, both here tonight and also in the documents that we've been given, the project aligns with our community strategic plan and Blueprint 100. And in my humble opinion, this could be the first of many small steps in our move towards closing the gap strategy under the pillar of cultural heritage. I raise this on the back of the motion proposed by Councillor Sutherland on the 26th of July at that meeting, and that was around the development of a closing the gap framework, which was supported by all councillors at that meeting. In regards to this particular project, it is my understanding that there was consultation with Auntie Yvonne's family, extended family and close friends, other community members, including Indigenous artists and the local Aboriginal Land Council. From a leadership perspective, I believe it is important that we as a council support the growth and development of future leaders in our community. People and culture are as important as bricks, mortar, rubbish and roads to the growth of our region. I asked myself, how did this project actually contribute to it? And as I see it, leadership is about motivating, coaching, influencing, innovating, and all to achieve a common goal and to get results in that process. In this case, it's the ability to provide a network to identify and support people and opportunities that will significantly contribute to the overall improvement in the fabric of our community as well as social and economic prosperity. Regional Unlimited is a not-for-profit organisation. It's based around network leadership, which is about identifying people or groups who may not normally be able to access opportunities and resources, and encouraging and supporting them to initiate collaborative action. Network leadership creates space for learning and peer support through regular interaction, and I think that's what the proposal of this project is. And if the success of the previous Regional Unlimited project, the RU Volunteering Hub, which connects people with volunteer opportunities and organisations, is anything to go by, I can only see this next project as being another positive contributor to the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Coates. Further speakers? Councillor Southwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to move an amendment to your notice of motion, please. I've sent it through earlier, if the girls might be able to bring it up, but essentially what I'm requesting for is a slight reduction in the amount that we would be funding for this project. I'm 100% supportive of the project. As Councillor Coates has mentioned, I think it's fantastic that council will be gifted with an artwork at the end of it, but not only that, we'll have 3 significant leadership events, which is going to be fantastic for our community. I also...
Sorry, have we got a seconder for that before you speak any further? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to second.
No. I just need a seconder.
You need a seconder before you can actually speak to the mayor, because it can't accept the amendment to speak up until there's a seconder.
Thank you.
So now Councillor Southwell can speak.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a fantastic project. However, we also have another, we have a policy, which is our annual donations policy. It's got $60,000 that we give out to a range of community groups, charities, not-for-profits every year. That $60,000 is usually requested bifold. There's usually double the amount of money people request to what we can hand out. And most of what we hand out is around 1,000 or 2,000, maximum probably 4,000 or 5,000. So just to be mindful, we need to be equitable to all of our charities, not-for-profits and community groups in the community. It's not really sustainable to be giving out $20,000 in cash. In saying that, it is a really good project and I am supportive of it. I think we should retain our platinum sponsorship if we are to provide $10,000 in cash, because remind everyone that that's actually 4 times the amount of the gold sponsorship, which is 2,500. So remind everyone as well, there are a number of gold sponsors that have already been secured by the group, and there are a number of silver and bronze sponsorships which have yet to be secured. But I do believe that 10,000 is a very significant amount of money, and also the $5,000 in waiving of fees will also be very, very useful. And I'd like to commend RU for their work on this project. I think it's fantastic. However, I'm just mindful that we do need to be equitable in the community and hand things out in an equitable manner. Thanks.
Councillors, we have an amendment been moved and seconded. Anyone wish to speak against the amendment?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I just want to speak in favour completely of the project. Unfortunately, I can't support the amendment of the reduction in the support. I think that for a program to be successful, I think supporting the cost in full is imperative to the success of the program. I know that it's labelled as a portrait program and focusing on local community leaders, especially folks on Arnea Kent. But the Tamworth Pioneers Commemorative Project, Portrait Leadership Development Project, it's a bit lengthy, but in essence, I think what we're doing is we're supporting a community-based leadership model. I think a leadership model that's been supported or developed by the community, for the community, I think it's a great initiative that should be fully supported by Tamworth Regional Council, and making sure that we highlight people who have had a positive impact on our region, not only now as a contemporary community, but also historically. I can see that other potential projects have been identified of focusing on people like Noel Park, and Bruce Trelaw and other significant members of our community who have been able to have a positive impact and create something which would be similar to a hall of pioneers, like a collective group of people who've had a positive impact on this community, and for us to be able to create a framework that leverages that and supports that, I really hope goes ahead, and I unfortunately believe that it needs the full support, so I wouldn't be able to support that amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Sutton. Anyone wish to make comment? Further comment? I'll just make one comment if I may. That money that we're talking about in the donations program that you're talking about, this is a completely different thing altogether. It's not linked to that donations program.
Yeah, I didn't say it was, but...
No, but you were using that as an example, and I'm just saying it is, in case other councillors thought it may have been, it's not linked to that donations program. Councillors, is there any further comment, please? Councillor Booth.
Mr Mayor, could I ask the GM about the scope of the works? The way I'm understanding the 20,000 that's requested, in terms of the amount of work that's going to be done in terms of not just a portrait, but the leadership program. Could you give us a bit of an idea? Is the scope of the works, is it going to require 20K? Could it be done with 10, as Councillor Sutherland's suggesting? I understand there's 5K that's going to be in kind, but could you just explain that a little bit more for us, please?
Mr Mayor, I can't, I'm sorry, Councillor Burton, I don't know enough detail to give an answer justification. Certainly the 5,000 in kind is around the use of council facilities, and also using our communications team to help with the development of the communications plan. So that's the value attached to that. The other money is split across all the other aspects of the project, everything from the materials required for the portrait painting, the catering for the days for the community members that will actually participate, and also a partial contribution towards the delivery of the of the leadership program, but the overall program is valued at over 50,000, so this is essentially almost a 50% contribution towards the overall cost, with the rest coming from the community. That's about all I can provide, I'm sorry.
That's enough, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Burke, I was just going to also say that the General Manager has said that the program's a lot more than 20,000, it's over 50,000, so we're part of the way there. There will have to be a lot of community money raised to support it along the way. Further questions? Further comment? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason I supported Councillor Southwell's motion initially was because I didn't think there was enough information, and to open up debate within the chamber. It's good to hear everyone else's comments and opinions, and yeah, a couple of years probably change in my opinion.
Further comments, councillors? Councillors, if there's no further comments, I'll put the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Aye.
The amendment's lost. Councillors, we'll go back to the notice of motion now, the mayoral minute. Is there any further comment on the mayoral minute? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I certainly voted against the motion last time, the mayoral minute, because there was not enough information, because there's no way that I'm going to commit $25,000 of community money without a rigorous background information. And I think my fellow councillors, that's the way we felt, and that's why this motion didn't get up at last time. But subsequently, there has been a significant amount of information that has been supplied. I think if in detail, it sort of outlines a lot of your questions, Councillor Burke. But to me, I totally support the Auntie Yvonne portrait. It's, I know it says that it's about the Indigenous contribution. I see, yes, that is part of it, but Auntie Yvonne was far more than that. She showed leadership for humanity, of everyone, and it almost gives me goosebumps, because I class her as a quite a close friend, and that was developed through public engagements that I attended in my career in council, and I just really want to support her in her endeavour. And what her endeavours was to demonstrate leadership, an inclusive leadership. She was just so good at that. So I'll be supporting the full funding of the program. I do see that council needs to be very vigilant now with our financial constraints right across the nation, but this one I think has significant value. I know we have a model that gives a quantitative figure on donations that we do when we do sporting events, because you can measure it in accommodation and restaurant activity, and there is a formula that works right across the state. But this one, there's no formula that quantifies the gains that we'll get out of leadership. So with that, Mr Mayor, I will be supporting it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Betts. Further comments, councillors? That being no further comments, I'll then put my mayoral minute. Those in favour say aye.
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 Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move now on to item 6 on the agenda. There are no notice of motions. Open council reports, item 7. There are environmental and planning. There are no reports. And we move to item 8, infrastructure and services, 8.1. Could I have somebody please move 8.1? Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Coates, did you wish to speak to that?
Just very briefly, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just like to thank Louise, who actually wrote this report, for providing us with this final report. We may easily think, why waste dollars on something that we already know anecdotally, and that's what the report actually provided us. But as so correctly pointed out in the report, the outcomes of this study help council to build a stronger case to governments for increased investment in water security for the future of Tamworth. But just as importantly, it highlights the need for building a more drought-resilient community for future generations.
Thank you, Councillor Coates. Any councillor wish to speak against the recommendation? Further comments on the recommendation? Councillor Southwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Coates has highlighted, just like to highlight that, look, we really do need to focus on water security for our region. As explained in the report, there are 3 adaptations due to the drought, including reduced investment in our region, avoiding hiring new staff, and no new businesses were established. So unless we can actually coordinate a secure water supply for Tamworth, we are in a lot of trouble for the future in terms of our economic environment. And I'd like to just speak to any state or federal members that might be listening tonight, just to say that, look, we have asked for some support for our water purification plant, which will help to secure water for our future. And so far, we've only received $50,000 towards a $105 million project. So we really need to obtain some support, and I'd like to call on our state and federal members to support that particular project. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Southwell. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I read the report with interest, and it's an excellent report. And I know that there is a lot of work that has gone into that report. And Louise Cadell, she did do a marvellous job, and I know she did a lot of work in the background as well, not just in work time. And as I said before with the Auntie Yvonne, while this one you can quantify, you can actually get some dollar figures of the effects of the drought. One of the things that you cannot quantify with dollars is the effect on the community and what the lack of water security does to mental health and a whole heap of other background things that you just can't measure. And to me, it's absolutely imperative that we just use this information. And as Councillor Southwell said, we need to really lobby the state and federal governments to really push the water purification, because we can be leaders in Australia with that sort of technology, and it's here, we can do it, we just need that support. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Mears.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, through you. I'd just like to support my fellow councillors in their praise of Louise Cadell. As Louise has, and many of our other staff do, some sensational work that makes our job seem quite easy. And as Councillor Coates said, we do have that anecdotal evidence, but if we're going to go forward, push government for money, we actually need facts and figures, and that's what they should be based on. So I think, I'll certainly support this recommendation, and hopefully we can get some benefit from it.
Thanks, Councillor Mears. Further, Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just to endorse our fellow councillors' comments as well, and it's great to have this report that was commissioned by the previous council, because it highlights the impact of the severity of not just the 70-odd million loss in 1 year, but the compounding effect that has year on year. For us in agriculture in particular, to live through a 1 in 100 year drought had impacts beyond what we could ever have imagined in terms of, as Councillor Betts says, mental health, the long-term progression and investment in agriculture. But more importantly for people, we talked about our youth here tonight, for anyone that had entered ag through that time in terms of acquisition and borrowings, they'd still be hemorrhaging today. I just hope and pray that we get some more sensible outcomes with the new federal water minister, rather than seeking to get the 450 gigalitres back into South Australia. I hope that the old use it or lose it notion to water being released from Chaffey Dam prior to the 30th of June can weigh heavy on the environment's hearts, and the fact that for Tamworth, that has its catchment so close to the Great Dividing Range for the Eastern Fall, we don't get the opportunities that our inland, a lot of our bigger inland river system sister cities actually get. And so we need to protect that. We need to work harder to ensure that we don't propel ourselves into a teens. I think we didn't quite get down below 10% with the dam in the last drought, but gee, we were experiencing measures that were extreme and would have become chaotic had we got below 10%. And, you know, that's without the investment that we believe that's required to give us more water capacity and to reuse and better utilise our water. So to have it in the form of a report like this is really going to highlight it. I totally endorse releasing the report and hope that we can get some better outcomes, as Councillor Southwell said, from our state and federal counterparts to understand the needs of the community as desperately as the Tamworth community felt it in the last drought.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And like fellow councillors, I just want to reiterate the support of the release of the report. And for me, reading through it was a real eye-opener for a lot of reasons, but definitely, you know, the entrenchment of the impacts of climate change. You know, it's acknowledged in the report the impact of climate change and the change in climate's having on our environment. And not just the environment as a country, but as our local ecosystems across Tamworth Regional Council, and that concern for changing climate and to be proactive against or to combat against climate change. I'm really excited to see what we can do as Tamworth Regional Council to be proactive in that space across other plans, including our upcoming sustainability strategy and others, to make sure that we're aligning all policies in place to acknowledge the presence of climate change.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Further comment? There being no further comment, I'll just make a couple of comments myself. I think the fact that the report that Council called for was put together by Regional Australia Institute and the CSIRO gives it massive credibility. Yep. And it's a document that we can use to go and lobby and, I guess, work on behalf of our community with both state and federal government to try and get some better outcomes. The other thing that I find interesting is that the modelling is in line with the Namoi Draft Regional Water Strategy. Very different modelling used for that, as was used by the RAI and the CSIRO, but they both aligned. But I do believe the findings, while they're good to have, are probably conservative and haven't really addressed some of the issues, and they weren't really meant to, some of the issues that you, Councillor Betts, raised, and that is with the mental health of people across the region. And that did have a big impact on people at that last drought, a massive impact that many of us probably didn't see that much of, but it was out there. It certainly was out there. So, councillors, thanks for your comments on this report, and I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to the next report, which is 9, Governance and Strategy. There are nil reports there, which means we move on to 10, Community Services. And we have 10.1, Tamworth Regional Youth Council. I'll move in a second, please. Okay. Moved Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Sutherland, would you like to speak to that report?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the Youth Council, Youth Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Secretary that are all here in presence tonight. I just want to say that the conversations at the Youth Council are continuing to rise above any expectation that I might have for a group of young people across the region. It just keeps superseding, you know, and I think that the way that we've been able to support our Youth Council so far has been really aspirational and inspirational for other councils across the region, where as looking at how young people can be a part of our council committees and subcommittees and more broader. You know, making sure that a youth voice is represented across all aspects and facets of Tamworth Regional Council and the work that we do, and making sure that there's a space provided for young people is so important. And I want to thank Director Gina Berica for her hard work in making sure that young people have a seat at the table, and the table, whatever that is, whether that's in traffic, whether that's in right across the board, not just pigeonholing young people to only speak about it. And to see young people step up and hear that they've read through all the reports and that they're asking questions about terms of reference. They're asking things that I probably should have asked before, you know, looking at different committees. And so it was, it's great to see and be able to work with and support such a proactive youth council.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation in 10.1? There being no one wishing to speak against, any further comments, councillors? Councillor Southwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to concur with my fellow councillor Sutherland in terms of what he mentioned and recognised our youth council members here today. It's fantastic to see our deputy youth mayor speak to us today, and as you would have all seen, he's extremely professional, and that is really the calibre of people at these youth council meetings. Although they might be short in stature, apart from our deputy mayor, they have a huge amount of passion and a huge amount of professionalism. I'm honestly taken aback every time I go to a meeting and just to see how professional they are. They do their research, they do their homework, and they operate extremely effectively, as we'll see in the next council report. But this particular meeting was around really fulfilling our blueprint around open and collaborative leadership. Because it was great to see Carly Cole from our comms team go and talk to them about our comms strategy and what's going on there. It was also good to see that the youth council members are open to working on some of our committees and working groups, because obviously it's very hard with school and university, not university, but school commitments and extracurricular commitments that they have. And they also discussed the youth forum, so it was a great meeting, and there's some really good things to come. Thank you.
Any further comments, councillors? Councillors, Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I won't speak anywhere near as eloquently as the past two councillors, but thanks for their comments. I think also that the engagement with the youth council is exceptional, and as Mr Lyon said earlier, we're only here holding on to what we've got. It's the youth of this country, the youth of this region that are going to drive the decisions of the future. And if we can pay that way, and get them involved in what they require, I think that's going to, hold very well for this region, having youth like this that are passionate, want to serve their fellow people, and give me a rest at times so I could sit down and give someone else a crack at running the place. Because, as I said, I think we're only holding the land, or as people say in different fields, we're the custodians of what we have now. But we certainly really have to develop and bring our youth through, because they're going to take over soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mears. Further comment? There being no further comment, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 2. Move Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Coates, would you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the commitment that's being shown by the Youth Council through their interest in participating in council committees and working groups. It's also great to see the connections growing between the Youth Council and the smaller communities, and when you attended out there, it was fantastic. It's very important to those communities that they feel included and heard in regards to their issues and needs. And with the Youth Council, they have their own voice, one that understands the issues as they relate to the younger generation. And lastly, we have seen the important role the Youth Councillors play in providing a different perspective and input on issues and initiatives, as well as being a conduit into the community via their families and friends. And I'd just like to add, as a councillor, I am very proud of our Youth Council, their work, their achievements to date. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Coates. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Anyone wish to make comment? Further comment, Councillor?
Can I just ask for a little bit of clarity just on one of the recommendations, please? Recommendation number 2, that in collaboration with the Youth Council and the University of New England, that the youth strategy be created. Can I just clarify that youth strategy will be owned by Tamworth Regional Council? And that will be a document that we have pushing forward?
I would suggest that it would be, but I'll ask one of the directors to make comment.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. The University of New England, a professor there, actually who specialises in social studies, has volunteered his time to assist the youth councillors in the development of the youth strategy.
Yep.
And shortly we should have some more news in terms of potential placement of a student, also assist the youth council. But I would agree this is actually the youth council's youth strategy for the region.
Thank you. You satisfied with?
Yep, can I keep going?
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarity. I feel that as such a huge stakeholder in the community and the form of government closest connected to the community, it's important that we do have a plan. And I think that plans are most impactful when they have clear levels of ownership. And I know that when we're talking around a regional youth strategy, we're talking around how can we work collaboratively with other organisations to achieve goals for our youth across the board. And as council, we are not the key service provider in a lot of these spaces. But I think that we are instrumental. When I say we, I mean council, that we're instrumental in being able to have an unbiased approach and being able to provide equitable service delivery. Whether intentional or not, services are bound with some vested interest, because they want to see their own service move forward. And for us as council, we're in a unique position to provide our youth council in that space. So fully support the development of a youth strategy and love the timeline. Just want to make comment on the financial contribution. I think that $10,000 commitment to supporting the projects and the delivery for the Youth Council is so important. Financial literacy is such an important development in all people, and starting that conversation with young people is so instrumental to the development to make sure that people become financially responsible. Allowing our Youth Council to be able to operate within a budget, to work on what's worth investing in, how can get returns and be more financially secure in that space. I think it's taking our commitment to supporting the Youth Council to the next level and saying that not only do we support the Youth Council, but we trust them. We trust them to be able to make decisions with money in a financial perspective that we can provide some extra support with. We're blessed to have the expertise in staff from a financial accountant perspective across the organisation, and to have that support offered to a group of young people and our young leaders is making sure that our youth are moving forward into a space fully aware of how to manage finances. Making sure that they're able to make decisions that's going to have a bigger impact than the sphere that they operate in themselves. So support the recommendation.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Southall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think that these particular, the particular recommendation is very important. I think it's very, very crucial that the financial element is there. The $10,000, which will, as highlighted by our Deputy Mayor, will actually directly support 16,000 young people in need throughout our region. I think it's great that the way that they've structured this Youth Council Action Plan is in line with the state government's 4 pillars, which are around work readiness, wellbeing, connectivity and community, which is fantastically well done. There's 8 actions over 12 months, and it's the best part of it is it's 100% developed for youth by youth. So 100% supportive of this, and I'd just like to call on my fellow councillors to also support the recommendation.
Councillors, further comments? There being no further comments, I'll just make a comment of my own, and that is that the initiative to form a youth council some time back, not with this council but before, I think it's been a great initiative, and to see this youth council that we have now growing the way they are and contributing in the way that they are and delivering some great outcomes for youth across our region is a real positive for our community, and I congratulate all of those that are involved in that youth council for the work that they're doing. Yeah. Councillors, I'll put that recommendation. All in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, that brings us to item 11. So before I call for a motion to move into closed council, I would ask the General Manager, has there been any requests for any items in the closed section to be brought forward into open council? Council, could I have somebody ask Councillor Burke, who's moving with Councillor Kate second, move into closed council? All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. report on.
Okay. Good to go, Scott? Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council, the report from the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 9th of August 2022. In closed council, you considered 6 items, 12.1 through 12.6. And for each of those items, you adopted the recommendations as per the business plan.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. That brings